we're moving on to step 2 of the process. We're going to analyze our audience. What's wonderful about taking a speech class is that you can find out who you are speaking with or to. Your effectiveness as a public speaker requires understanding of your audience. So we're going to look at a number of characteristics. This next slide offers a good example of a man who's talking about assumptions we often make about our audiences and how to avoid them.
Here are some time-tested tips to help you prepare so that you feel empowered to impress others. Truly, getting to know your audience begins before you ever present. Have you ever listened to a speaker you couldn't connect with? Worse yet, have you ever been a speaker who couldn't make that connection with your audience? Maybe they didn't laugh at a joke, or they seemed to be ignoring you. Maybe some of them even walked out. Unfortunately, this happens to some speakers. It's the result of an assumption speakers make that all audiences are going to be just like them. Assuming that an audience shares your beliefs, values, and political preferences is dangerous. Never rely on the way people look to judge how they will behave as an audience or react to your presentation. You run the risk of alienating or offending them. Instead, make sure you know something about the culture of the audience you are addressing.
We'll move on now to audience sociology. There are many factors that we need to consider when speaking to our audiences because we won't always be in a college classroom. So we have to consider certain characteristics. In Table 2 in your textbook, DeVito offers a number of suggestions to look at. Factors such as culture, age, gender, religion, values, etc. Let's look now to audience psychology and focus on 3 separate questions. How willing is your audience to listen? How knowledgeable is your audience? And how favorable is your audience? It's important not to confuse these because sometimes people can be favorable towards your topic, but not like the speech itself. So let's talk about willingness. Sometimes an audience is more willing to listen, and it takes less work if they're not hostile towards your topic. So always make sure you relate your topic to their needs and their wants. Connect your topic and your purpose to that audience and involve them. Next, ask yourself how knowledgeable they are. Never be condescending. Don't talk down to them, and don't confuse a lack of knowledge with a lack of intelligence. Just let them know you're going to extend their knowledge in this area. Last, how favorable is your audience? If you face an audience that has unfavorable attitudes towards your topic or your purpose, consider building on commonalities and emphasizing similarities. Talk about agreement. Talk about major differences, but that you're just going for small gains, and ask them to hear you out. So let's say you're giving your speech and you look around and you are seeing some things that are bothersome. This is called an analysis and adaptation during the speech. And here are some suggestions for adapting to an audience during your presentation. First of all, focus on them as listeners and keep in mind this is the first time that they've ever heard this speech. Pay attention to the messages they're sending you. If they're bored, increase your volume or move closer. If they express hostility, stress similarities. If they seem puzzled, pause a moment, rephrase, ask questions, be direct. Ask someone in the audience, I see you're knitting your brows. Do you have a question? Use phrases that show you're paying attention to their feedback. For example, I know it's been a long day. We're almost at the end of this speech. Make sure they're on board with you. And when they walk out the door, you'll know that they can at least recall your 3 main points. We're moving next into how to analyze your audience. And we have 4 basic ways of getting at information from our audience. And because we are an online class, you're going to be using the discussion board for this. The first one is called a Likert scale. Now, a Likert scale works this way. You ask a question such as, on a scale of 1 to 5, how many of you know something about baseball? The next type of question is an open-ended question. Now, this is a tougher type of question because open-ended questions come with open-ended answers. So if you ask your audience, how do you feel about X, Y, or Z, you're going to get a more lengthy response. Sometimes you can use these, but if you are asking for personal information, you're going to have to find a way to get information from your audience so that they don't have to submit their names. The next one is the oral survey. These are basic yes or no questions. So you might ask, yes or no, I played baseball in high school. Or, how many of you enjoy baseball? Raise your hand. This is why we need the demographics worksheet. This will tell us a great deal about who's in this class, what the median age is, the gender of our classmates. It'll also give us an idea of where people are coming from. So make sure you get that demographics worksheet in and you complete the questions for 2A coming up. On this last slide, you will see that it reads workbook. That's because in your workbook, you will find a number of items that will help you in this step of the process. One, there's a learn section with a number of sample type questions of Likert questions, open-ended, etc. As well, there's a practice sheet for you to work with. Here on this slide, you will see the actual page that you need to complete, along with some examples. I've included Marilyn Monroe questions so that you can see how I use the variety of questions that I can actually ask my audience. You'll notice there are no open-ended questions, but if there were, again, I'd have to find a way to get the information anonymously. Okay, so that means hand in 2A. We'll be moving on to 2B, which is your audience's responses to your 2A questions coming up.